Welcome to Star Watch Now, your front row seat to all the hottest gossip, drama, and breaking news from the world of entertainment. If it's trending, shocking, or star-studded, we're covering it. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. What if the fairy tale was never fiction? What if the glances, the moments, the silence were all leading to this? When the first images emerged of Xiao, Zhan, and Wang Yibo standing beneath the vaulted arches of an old European church, hand in hand, eyes locked, the internet didn't just react, it stopped. The world held its breath. No announcement, no press release, just two souls, dressed in quiet elegance, exchanging vows in candlelight. Was it a dream? A drama shoot? A secret reality? No one knew for sure, but emotionally it was undeniably real. Beyond the spectacle of celebrity and the constant glare of the public eye, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's union emerged as something far more profound than just a media event. It was not curated for headlines or orchestrated for virality. It was an intimate commitment quietly sealed between two hearts that had journeyed together through years of shared silence and invisible strength. Their wedding, tucked away in a centuries-old cathedral far from flashing lights and red carpets, stood as a powerful testament to the kind of love that asks for nothing but to be quietly lived and deeply felt. There were no glimmering endorsements, no extravagant displays of wealth, and no audience expecting a performance. Instead, there was stillness. There was sincerity. Their vows were whispered rather than declared, written not by a team of writers, but by their own hands, shaped by the emotions of a bond long held in quiet devotion. Every detail, from the handcrafted rings to the tree planted in the chapel garden, was chosen not for attention but for meaning. This was a wedding that nourished the soul, not the ego. It reminded the world that the most profound moments in life are rarely loud. They are soft, often unseen, but unforgettable. Their ceremony was not just a celebration of their love, but of the values it was built upon: respect, patience, and the quiet courage to be true to oneself in a world that often demands performance. In choosing love over spectacle, they didn't just marry each other. They honored the kind of love that transcends expectation, breaks tradition with grace, and, in its simplicity, becomes something eternal. When the first images surfaced, subtle, luminous, and intimate, the world didn't just react, it reverberated. From Seoul's neon-lit nights to Seattle's quiet dawns, from the ancient calm of Kyoto to the modern rush of Toronto's skyline, hearts paused in unison. This wasn't the kind of viral sensation designed to spark controversy or trend for a day. It was something deeper, more human. A ripple that turned into a wave, powered not by hype, but by hope. Across continents and cultures, people found themselves unexpectedly moved. Strangers became connected by a shared emotion, wonder. In a time when so much feels performative, when love is often filtered and staged for public approval, this moment, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's quiet union, offered something achingly rare: authenticity. It didn't matter if you spoke Mandarin, English, Korean, or French. It didn't matter where you lived or who you loved. The message reached past language and geography. It was about truth and the audacity of choosing love with dignity. In cafes in Bangkok, subways in Paris, living rooms in Los Angeles, and laneways in Melbourne, conversations turned to this singular event. Not just because two beloved stars had chosen each other, but because, in doing so, they reminded us all of something tender and timeless. That real love, when witnessed even from afar, has the power to soften cynicism and awaken the part of us still willing to believe in something beautiful. This was not just news. It was a global moment of emotional resonance, echoing across cities, generations, and identities. It became a mirror reflecting not only who they were to each other, but who we all long to be when love is brave enough to speak without words. For years, their story lived in the space between fiction and longing. A tale whispered in fan circles, carried in artwork, imagined in poems, yet often dismissed as mere fantasy. Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's connection, forged quietly behind the scenes and beneath the noise of stardom, felt almost too profound to be real. To many, It was a dream kept alive by hope, a beautiful illusion delicately crafted by those who saw something more in every glance, every shared silence. But beneath the surface, something unshakably true was taking root. When the world finally caught a glimpse of their private union, it was not a revelation. It was recognition. The signs had always been there, hidden in plain sight. The sincerity of their interactions, the ease of their companionship, the protective way they moved around each other. All of it pointed to something that didn't need validation to exist. What once was called fantasy was, in truth, the foundation of a love built with care, endurance, and quiet resolve. This was never about spectacle or public approval. It was about building a life, brick by brick, moment by moment, far from the stage lights. Their love endured not because it sought to prove anything to the world, but because it never tried to. It simply was. And that's what made it extraordinary. In a world saturated with fleeting affection and curated moments, there stood apart a love that grew not for applause, but for shelter. What once seemed imagined is now undeniable. The dream was always real. It simply chose to reveal itself in its own time, with grace and without permission. And in doing so, it turned quiet belief into lasting truth. Amid a world dazzled by extravagance, where weddings often become exhibitions of wealth and spectacle, Zhan and Wang chose a path less expected, one marked by meaning, not luxury. Their ceremony was not designed to impress, but to express. It was a tribute to authenticity, a celebration of their bond built far from the noise of fame. Each element of their wedding, from the location to the smallest symbolic details, spoke not to status but to soul. There were no elaborate flower arches flown in from foreign lands, no opulent designer gowns showcased for the press. Instead, there was a quiet, candlelit chapel, timeless and intimate, where every stone seemed to carry history, and every flickering flame seemed to whisper devotion. Guests, limited to only the closest circle, entered not as spectators but as witnesses to something deeply personal. No sponsorships, no staged posts, no hidden agenda. Just two hearts standing together, choosing one another without needing to prove it to the world. Even the rings exchanged were handcrafted, not for their carat count, but for the stories engraved within them, phrases and symbols only they understood. The reception was a modest gathering over food made with love, not luxury, served with laughter, tears, and quiet joy. In choosing this path, they offered something rare, a reminder that love does not need to be loud to be heard, or expensive to be valuable. Theirs was not a wedding to be envied, but one to be felt. A sacred exchange rooted in years of silent understanding and unspoken support. In a world rushing toward glamour, they slowed down for grace. And in doing so, they reminded us all of what truly matters when two people decide to share a life. Not how it looks, but what it means. As the golden light of dawn broke over the quiet horizon, the world still held its breath from the day before. The whispers of Zhan and Wang Yibo's wedding lingered like a soft echo, not of spectacle, but of something sacred. And yet, while most would expect the morning after such a moment to be one of rest or retreat, theirs was a different kind of celebration, one that reached far beyond themselves. Instead of escaping to luxury or hiding from the gaze of the world, they chose to give. In the soft hours of the morning, they visited an orphanage. Not with cameras, not for publicity, but with arms full of gifts and hearts full of tenderness. Where others might have taken that time to bask in the glow of their union, they turned outward. Their love, quietly built over the years, did not end at the altar. It overflowed. They played with children, knelt to tie shoelaces, and held small hands with genuine care. Laughter echoed down narrow halls, not from guests in gowns but from children who, for a moment, felt seen, loved, and celebrated. It wasn't charity, it was connection, a reflection of the love they had just promised to each other. One rooted in compassion, presence, and humility. In a world often distracted by the grand, they chose grace. In a culture of self-celebration, they chose service. That morning revealed who they are not just as public figures, but as people. Their love, in its truest form, was never meant to be confined to two. It was meant to ripple outward. And perhaps that is the most powerful vow of all. Not only to love each other, but to let that love become a quiet light in places where light is needed most. In a world still learning how to understand love in all its forms, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo stood together, not with loud declarations, but with a quiet courage that spoke louder than any headline. Their union wasn't just a personal milestone. It was a gentle yet powerful message to the world. Love does not need permission. It does not need to fit into the boxes that society has drawn, nor bow to the expectations others place upon it. Their story was never defined by labels. It wasn't shaped for the sake of representation, nor constructed to make a point. It unfolded slowly, in silence, away from the noise, nurtured by respect and understanding. And yet, when their love finally stood in the light, it did more than just inspire. It challenged. It challenged long-held assumptions. It softened hardened beliefs. And most of all, it reminded us that love, true love, is never wrong, no matter what form it takes. By simply being themselves, by choosing each other without explanation or justification, they gave voice to millions who have loved quietly, in fear or in shadows. They didn't claim to be heroes or symbols, but through their authenticity, they became both. In their vow, spoken not for applause but for each other, there was a quiet revolution. A reminder that love does not need to explain itself to exist. It only needs to be lived honestly, bravely, and fully. Their story is not just about two people finding each other. It is about what happens when love stops asking for acceptance and simply dares to be. In doing so, they didn't just walk forward as partners. They walked forward as hope, as proof, as a living answer to a question so many are still afraid to ask. Can I love freely? And the answer now is yes. At the end of their vows, Xiao Zhan looked into Yibo's eyes and whispered, "No matter how long we walk this earth, may I always find you first in the crowd." And Yibo replied, "You were never part of my plan, but now you are my whole future." The chapel doors opened, sunlight spilled in, and two shadows walked into a new life, hand in hand, soul with soul. Please like, subscribe, and follow our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us what truly matters. Speech balloon comment below. What does real love mean to you? We read every message and treasure your words. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in love. Sparkles, because somewhere out there, love is always finding its way. Sparkling heart.